All right, hello everybody. Nice to see you. I'm Margot Edelman. I'm the lead of Edelman's technology practice. And for those of you who aren't familiar, Edelman is the world's largest PR firm, and we are also experts on trust. So we do a study every year called the Trust Barometer, which looks at the state of trust in 4 key institutions: business, government, media, and NGOs. It comes out next week, timed to coincide with the World Economic Forum. But this year, we actually decided we were going to do a deep dive on trust in AI, because it's such an important topic. We really wanted to dig in and understand what is the state of trust in AI globally today. So we did a poll, actually did the research in November, and we surveyed respondents in 5 countries to get a little bit of a mix of the developed and the developing world. So specifically, we surveyed respondents in the US, the UK, Germany, Brazil, and China, 1,000 respondents in each country, so pretty robust findings. And we found some really, really interesting information on the state of trust today and what it's going to take to build enthusiasm and adoption around AI. So today, AI adoption actually faces 4 key divides that I'm going to take you through. The first is geographic divide. So countries like Brazil and China actually embrace greater AI use, as you can see from the chart here. However, developed markets are actually resisting it. So again, if you look at the stats for the US, the UK, Germany, they're way more likely to say that they reject AI versus embrace AI. There's also industry divides as well. So employees in the technology industry and the finance industry actually are starting to accept AI at work. However, those in other industries like food and transportation actually are not. And so again, if you're an employer in one of these industries, such as food or transport, or others on the screen, again, you might have to think really carefully, how do I get my employees on board? Or if you're an AI company selling into these industries, it's actually going to be a little bit more of a complicated sale or a complicated journey, again, to get people on board. There's also an income divide in trust in AI. So the majority of those who are low income, and this is really across markets, fear being left behind. Because, okay, that's intuitive. But to me, the really interesting thing here is actually if you look at the data from the US, and also to a certain extent from the UK and Germany, for high-income respondents, people you think might be on board, they also feel that they're at risk as well from the technology. So again, there is a lot of worry and fear around being left behind in the age of AI. And also, there is an age divide. So younger generations trust AI more than older generations do. And again, this is consistent across markets, although again, the developing world has more trust generally than the developed world. However, again, when you dig into the data a little further, what's really interesting, if you look at the data for the US, the majority actually of those 18 to 34 in the US say they don't trust AI. So it's actually something that is impacting younger people as well as those who are older, in particular in the US, but also to a certain extent in Germany and the UK. So this is all sort of setting the stage for what's going to come next, which is how we're going to actually increase enthusiasm and adoption for the technology. As Alessia said, we want this to be a positive conversation, but we're just sort of setting the stage originally with some of the findings from the data. And there's a geographic split as well on whether AI will help address urgent societal issues. So we asked specifically around issues such as climate change. Will it make it better? Around people's work lives, around mental health. And there's actually a lot of positivity in places like Brazil and China about what AI can do to help solve these core issues. However, there's a lot of skepticism in the developed world, in particular in the US and the UK. They actually think that AI might make these areas worse. So again, a pretty significant split along developed and developing world lines. So what we really found when we dug into the data is that trust is a big unlock. Trust really powers AI adoption. If you can get trust in the technology, then people want to use it and they're enthusiastic about it. So again, knowledge and trust, the top drivers for AI enthusiasm. As you can see, people say they're moderately or very informed about AI, they're 17% more likely to be enthusiastic about it. Same thing for whether they trust AI. The last one is AI going to improve my life in 5 years? And almost 14% say, yes, I get more enthusiastic if I believe it's going to improve my life. So again, knowledge, trust, and making my life better. And with trust, all markets are more likely to embrace AI. So when people say that they trust the technology, as you can see from the column here in green, they are far more likely to trust it. When they say they distrust, the numbers very much skew to the red. And another interesting stat is that among those who are AI resistant, it's not because they've had negative personal experiences with generative AI. So we actually asked the question, among those who say, I reject the growing use of AI, we said, have you personally had a bad experience with generative AI? Only 18% said yes, they had. So again, it's more about fear and mistrust rather than people actually not having a good experience with the tech, which I think is, again, an incredibly important data point. And trust, again, is a bigger obstacle to use than motivation, access, or intimidation by the technology. So again, people are worried about the use of the data, and is it going to be protected? What's going to happen with my data? Or I don't trust the technology. That's the biggest cause of issues for why people are not using it. It's much more than motivation and access, or that they're intimidated by it. They just don't know how to use it. That's not what's really going on. It's around fears around data use, and it's also around trust. And through generative AI, frequent users say they're faster, sharper, and more creative problem solvers. So again, I think this is an incredibly important slide because it shows when people are actually using the technology, they really like it. They're saying it helps me with my speed of getting things done. It helps me with my understanding of complex issues. It helps me to be more creative. So the more frequent use, the more people like it, and the more they want to use it. So again, a good data point, especially for those who work in the AI field. Employers are also facing a critical moment. And the key thing here is really the workplace is ground zero for adoption of AI. Many say they're concerned about business leaders' transparency on jobs and generative AI. I think this is an important slide, especially in markets like Germany, UK, in particular the US. People say they feel that business leaders are not fully honest with their employees about job cuts related to AI. So again, important data point. And in most markets, my employer has the greatest license to use AI. So while people feel maybe not business leaders are not being transparent, at the same time, in their own workplace, they actually feel that there is license to use AI. So if you look at my employer data versus business overall, or definitely media or government, my employer is the one with the greatest license to use and implement the technology. And when employees are brought into AI transformation, they are more enthusiastic. And what does being brought into AI transformation actually mean? It's that they feel that their employer is using AI to enhance productivity, not to eliminate jobs, and also that they're getting high-quality training in how to use AI. So it's that combination of enhancing productivity and also training that makes employees feel brought along. Employees are also motivated to embrace AI by job transformation, not job insecurity. Fear is not a motivator here. It's about what is the opportunity, what's the possibility. And again, super interesting data point. There's actually a shared belief across political lines, and specifically if you're left, center, or right, that business and government both need to step up on AI. They want to get high-quality training from companies. They want people to be retraining their workers. And for government, they want some type of safety net. They want to know that if they get laid off, they're going to be safe. So again, this is an opportunity for both sides of the political spectrum to come together on. So lastly, how do we build trust in AI? So first, don't force it. People who distrust AI are more likely to say that AI is imposed on them. You can see the data right here very clearly. So again, it's about pulling people in versus forcing people, and that's the difference. Also want to empower employees to find AI-informed solutions. So when people say, hey, AI is helping me find solutions at work, they are far more likely to trust it and use it. So again, data is super clear here, a 40-point jump in places like Germany in the US. And lastly, speaking through peers. They are the only consistently trusted voices on generative AI. So when we ask, I trust each to tell the truth about generative AI, it's someone like me. It's my friends and family. Potentially, it's scientists or AI researchers, or maybe my CEO, but CEOs in general, government leaders in general, not trusted to tell the truth. So again, it's about that peer-to-peer communication. So to conclude, there are 4 key points to take away from these findings. First, it's that trust sets the foundation for innovation. Trust really is what is the building block that allows for enthusiasm and adoption. And how do you get trust? It's about knowledge and it's about use. That is what builds trust. So that's a key aspect of how to get people on board. Secondly, it's important to ensure that the benefits of AI are felt across the board. AI should not just be for one income set, one specific age group, specific industries, or a specific country. It really needs to be felt across the board to bring people along. Next, AI acceptance hinges on the workplace. The workplace, as I said, is ground zero for where people really can use and experience generative AI in a way that's productive, in a way it feels that helps them. And how do you bring people along? It's the 2 things we talked about. It's first ensuring that there's training and people don't necessarily feel that there's job insecurity. And secondly, it's ensuring that it's talking about enhancing productivity. So again, training and productivity are what bring people along. And then lastly, it's about winning through peer influence and personal experience. It's not about top-down communication. Of course, what your CEO says is important, but for really getting people on board, it's having those conversations with your friends, with your family, potentially hearing from a researcher as to the impact of the technology on their lives. So again, these are the 4 key takeaways for how to build trust and adoption in AI at a time when it is absolutely at a crossroads. So thank you, everybody, for the time. If you're interested in learning more, you can download the full report at edelman.com, or I'll be around the conference, of course, for the next couple of days, so come find me and ask questions. So thank you again to the DLD team.